Good evening. We welcome you to our third edition of the Playoff Rankings Breakdown Show. More numbers today from the FHSAA coming out this morning, and we're going to go all over all of those matchups currently looking at the high school football playoffs. So Joshua Wilson, the owner and publisher of FloridaHSFootball.com. I am Marty Pallman, welcoming you to this evening's edition of the Playoff Breakdown Show. And Josh, week 3 of it's almost like the BCS used to be. We come out with these numbers, and then we have a show on Tuesday night, and we just had a chance to look at some of these. And again, some more interesting numbers this week. We have maybe some surprises and some things that are starting to make a little more sense as we go along this season.
No, you're right. Things are starting to make a little bit more sense now. Things are starting to look a little bit more clear in terms of the playoff picture itself, because I'll tell you what, it really is something that we're trying to get a handle on and everything in here. And of course, Marty, is a thing we've kind of, hopefully we're back to the one camera shot now instead of 2 like we were last week, of us in the camera shot instead, and trying to figure out a little bit of the new setup. And of course, Mr. Pullman got a haircut, I think.
Yes. I can't tell. It looks like, it's just the light. It looks like I don't have any hair on top of my head, but I know it's not that short. So anyway, just getting used to the light. But again, this is coming up week 8 this week, so
it's hard to believe.
We still have another 4 weeks, really. Actually, now until the announcement will be made. Yeah, nearly 4 weeks until they announce the playoff teams, which will be coming up November 4th, I believe, November 3rd or 4th, somewhere in that area.
It would be a Sunday.
November 5th, then. That's right. It's the first Sunday in November. So, again, though, it's always kind of neat to look at these things and kind of go through the classifications and see who right now would play each other, and also take a look at how the numbers stack up. So let's get going, because we got a lot to get to.
Yeah, a lot to get to. I know we're a few minutes behind here. It's coming on tonight, but we had a few things we're trying to settle on the tech side of things, and that's what we get going here. And of course, everything, Marty, here in terms of everything, as we get this started here, bring up the brackets here, and of course you can see us here on the screen. 1R is definitely up on the platter here to start things off. And hey, we've got a new number 1 sitting there in Region 1, and 1R Bozeman moves up to the top spot. Holmes County slides back a spot here, Marty. But looking at everything here, it's pretty much there's the only other change in the thing would be Northview comes in, Baker goes out, and Baker's struggling, but Northview beat Baker, so there you go. That's what you got right there, sitting in Class 1R Region 1 as we look at everything here.
Yeah, Bozeman, as you said, they switched places with Liberty, or Holmes County, this week. So the Bozeman Bucks now in the top spot in Region 1, and then on down the line, Chipley Jay continues in that 4th spot. As you said, Northview, last year's 1R state runner-up, moves in this week. They were 8th last week, now at number 5. Vernon drops a spot, but they stay at 6th. And as you said, Baker now in 7th. So they are out of the top 6 after losing to Northview. So we'll see if Baker can make their way back in as the rest of the season goes on. But right now, Northview starting to get themselves into better position.
No, absolutely. And of course, let's roll into Region 2, Marty, here in 1R. As you noticed this week, I did finally got it set to where, hey, the 1 and 2 seeds, they're automatically into the regional semifinals if they advance. That's how they, where they, depending on what the final brackets come out, but that's what they would look like here as we go along. Bluntstown, really, actually, the only biggest change this week in Region 2 is actually Weewa Hitchika moving in and coming in. They're sitting there at the number 5 seed. Sneeds is out right this second. Sneeds is struggling here. Sneeds had been pretty good for the last few years, but this year, I mean, the Pirates are struggling, and of course losing to Bluntstown 7-0. That's a hard one to swallow there.
Yeah, no real change this week other than Weewa Hitchika. You're right. Bluntstown staying on top of Silla Christian 2nd and Port St. Joe 3rd. So, yeah, other than Sneeds falling out, nothing really new in Region 2. And as we take a look now at Region 3.
No, absolutely. Let's take a look at Region 3 here as we get rolling here. And then, of course, we've got a new number 1 seed sitting here in Region 3, Marty, in Class 1R.
Yeah, Fort White that goes to Lafayette, beats them 42-7. So big win for the Indians, and they move into the top spot. Madison County was off last week. They dropped to number 2. Lafayette was number 1. They actually Madison County went up a spot to 2nd despite not playing. Lafayette had been number 1. They dropped to 3rd. So as you see right now, Lafayette and Hamilton County would play. Hamilton County drops a spot but stays 6th. Brantford moves up 2 to 5th, and Union County in that 4th spot. Union County right now would play against Brantford in the first round. Fort White and Madison would get buys. So first team out, Hilliard as well. So interesting there. There's a little bit of movement in Region 3. Fort White moves to the top. Their only loss so far this year to Hawthorne.
Yeah, absolutely. Williston, yeah. And speaking of such things with Williston and Hawthorne, Marty, let's roll into Region 4 here. We're actually... There is a few changes in this one. Actually, Okay, so it's supposed to say Region 4. It said Region 3, but it's actually Region 4. So the bracket's correct. The number is not right on there, but it's Region 4. I can tell you that. The bracket is correct on there. But Williston sitting there at 7-0. Hawthorne 6-0. Both of them teams, I mean, they're not too far away from each other in terms of thing. I mean, they're only a couple points difference here. But hey, how about this? Dixie County moves up 2. They were from 6 to 4 here this week. And I mean, they got a pretty good win over Chiefland. 19-18 this past week.
Yeah, it was a big win for Dixie County. They continue, only had one loss this season so far. Pahokee drops a spot, but they stay 5th. Chiefland drops a spot, stays 6th. But Williston continuing to stay at the top, a 15.609 number. Hawthorne right behind them at 13.602. And Williston, big win at Newberry last week. We'll talk about that in the North Florida Blitz later tonight. Williston had to score late, but did beat Newberry 24-22, so they stay unbeaten. And Hawthorne, and Newberry stays 3rd. Newberry's in a pretty good spot right now as well. And Hawthorne goes to St. Petersburg and beats up on a winless Gibbs team, so they stay right behind Wilson number 2.
Yeah, and the thing is that, you know, and then this week, this week will determine a lot about Hawthorne as they they play Union County.
Yeah, they do. And actually, last year, that was a game Union County led 21-0 at halftime, and Hawthorne had to rally. They scored a touchdown in the last 20 seconds to win. So that was a classic last year. They nearly played the state championship game. But, yeah, I think this week it's going to be a little bit tougher for Union County to win on the road. It's a different Union County team, but Hawthorne just continues. You know, we talk about defenses. We'll talk about Bradford in a few minutes, but Hawthorne's been kind of the same way. You just don't score points on this team.
No, absolutely. And good evening to you, Michael Parsons, who chimes in. Williston and Hawthorne, 2 strong teams, and never count out Pahokee, which Pahokee, slid back from 4 to 5.
Agreed.
So Pahokee making a trip to Dixie County right now, that would be huge right there for Dixie County to host Pahokee.
Pahokee and Hawthorne last year was an absolute classic. I mean, other than the end of the game, which was kind of a bad situation, but the game itself was really well played. Hawthorne held on to win by 1. So if you got Pahokee, then you're right. Pahokee is a team that has that can cause a lot of trouble, and they're the only team that not from the North Central Florida area in Region 4.
No, absolutely. All right, let's roll this along here, Marty. And as we go into Class 1S, Regions 1 and 2 here, where the only 4 teams per region go to the playoffs, and the 2 district champs and 2 at-large teams. And really here, the only change this week really we see in Region 1 this week is McClay coming in, and then, of course, Rocky Bayou Christian sliding out and right this second. So hopefully this will be really interesting here as that, that 4 seed in these regions, and, of course, the 8 seed in most of the other regions, and the 6 and the 1 those are the seeds that are, that are going to fluctuate week to week usually.
Right, that's true. And as you said, no change here other than McClay moving into the 4th spot, and despite having a 2-4 record. Yeah, this region, interestingly enough, you got North Florida Christian in the top 5 and 2. Then you have 3 teams below them in the 2, 3, and 4 spots that are combined 3 and 14. So it's not exactly the best, the cream of the crop, but some of these teams are going to make it. Rocky Bayou Christian falling out this week as well from 4th to 5th. But it looks like North Florida Christian right now in control there in Region 1.
No, absolutely here and everything. And, of course, as we look at Region 2 here, Holy Trinity sitting there still at 1, but the number 4 seed swaps out this week as Trinity Catholic now slides in. PK Young actually takes a step backwards here, and that's what we got right now is Trinity Catholic actually looking like they're back into playoff position here, Marty, despite the fact they lost 31-3 to Calvary Christian out of Clearwater.
Well, it all comes down to their schedule at this point. You're right. Trinity Catholic 1-5, but they've played Clearwater Central Catholic. They played Jacksonville Reigns, and they've played Calvary Christian, as you said. They played Florida High. So, yeah, it's been a pretty tough slate. They're going to get some wins coming down the stretch, although they still have a game with Buoltz left. But yeah, Trinity Catholic, they did enough to move into that 4th spot. And I have a feeling they'll probably be okay for the postseason as right now this region, again, Holy Trinity, Halifax Academy, Melbourne Central Catholic, the top 3, and Trinity Catholic replacing PK Young this week, who lost a tough one to West Nassau, and the Blue Wave also have a game, I think, with Trinity still. So that'll maybe
yes, they do.
save a
That'll
lot
decide the district title right
yeah,
there.
that'll decide it right there, and probably decide who's in that top 4 as well.
No, absolutely. And of course, Marty, as we roll into regions 3 and 4 here, this gets interesting here in terms of everything else. I mean, I tell you what, it's really going to be interesting to see how we get going with this one because, I mean, there's not really much change we can really talk about here because it pretty much stayed the same between the 3 and 4 this week.
This is the direct opposite of Region 1. The 4 teams here, Community School Naples, First Baptist of Naples, Moore Haven, and Evangelical Christian of Fort Myers are combined 18-7. So this is a really good region led by, right now, Community School at 5-0. You mentioned First Baptist, the defending state champ there as well. Moore Haven moves to 3rd, and Evangelical Christian staying in 4th. Yeah, this is a good top 4. St. John Newman just out from Naples, but yeah, this is a really interesting top 4. I think this will be a pretty good battle, and they're all Naples or Fort Myers area teams there in Region 4.
No, absolutely. And of course, with that said, Marty, we go into Class 1M now here with Regions 1 and 2. And there's actually an interesting here, Marty, is that we got an interesting shuffle here a little bit here in terms of between the 3 teams out of Jacksonville, Trinity Christian, Providence, and University Christian, who are sitting there in that mix of that top 4. Trinity Christian slides back from 2 to 4. Providence moves up to 2. University Christian is sitting there still stuck at 3. And really, very interesting. The Providence Stallions, they are on a roll here, 6-1 right now on the season. And I can tell you this, they still have a date remaining with Trinity Christian that will ultimately decide who wins the district, thing. But I say this, University Christian and Trinity Christian play this week.
Right.
So that will even tell us even more.
Trinity Christian has a lot to say still about this. Yeah, with a game against UC and then a game against Providence. But right now, Providence has already beaten UC. So Providence is in the catbird seat, I guess you could say, there in region in 1M District 1 as the number 2 seed overall. Orlando Christian Prep continuing to roll undefeated 7-0 on top of this region, and First Academy of Orlando is still the first team out. But yeah, it's going to get kind of interesting to see between those 3 Jacksonville schools as we head to the end of the year here in Region 1.
No, absolutely, Marty. And of course, Region 2, pretty much everything stays the same except that, pretty much with that looking at things, Clearwater Central Catholic still sitting there at 1. A dominant stronghold in that 1 spot, Marty, in Region 2, and Carrollwood Day sitting there right behind them at 2. So Region 2, Clearwater Central Catholic 1, Carrollwood Day 2. I really believe that those 2 teams will be the top 2 seeds. Really, I think in the order you see these seedings right now, except for Northside and Indian Rocks, I think those could flip-flop depending on who wins. Again, with Northside Christian and Indian Rocks, they still have to play each other. That will determine 1M4, but other than that, I don't see anybody catching CCC there at the top.
Yeah, they've already beaten Carrollwood Day, so yeah, I think you're right. These are the top 2, and they should be that way. We'll see what happens on the back if Sefton Christian gets in, or what happens between Northside and Indian Rocks. But you're right; I think at least the top 2 are set, definitely, and it'll just depend on what happens in the 2 behind them.
No, absolutely, Marty. And of course, as we roll into regions 3 and 4 in Class 1M, Marty, here you go. Chaminade Madonna just still a stranglehold on everybody else across the state in terms of the numbers. Chaminade Madonna, power rating 23.688. The next closest team, who actually moves back into the number 2 spot this week, Marty? Cardinal Newman, 13.159. There is a huge, like a 10-point swing here in terms of the power rating between Chaminade Madonna and Cardinal Newman. There's nobody catching the Lions in this region, and I'm telling you, I mean, it's Chaminade Madonna's all to lose here in Class 1M.
Oh, absolutely. Although I think we're going to see, and we'll look at it in a minute, Clearwater Central Catholic may have something to say about that. Any of those University, Trinity Christian, some of those teams in Jacksonville. And then in the bottom in Region 4, we'll talk about True North in a minute. But, yeah, Chaminade's dominating, 23.688 computer number overall. They are pulled 10 points ahead of Cardinal Newman, who is in second. But, yeah, good move by Cardinal Newman. Benjamin at 3rd, and Avant-Garde of Hollywood, I like saying that, in 4th.
Yeah, and it's only 5 teams in that region sitting there. St. John Paul II Boca Raton still sitting there on the outside. So, and looking at Region 4, True North sitting there at the top. True North is much improved. Of course, they're going to have probably the biggest challenge of the season when Bradford comes down to play True North this week on Friday at 3:30 kickoff. So this is a big thing right here on that one with True North, but they're sitting there at the 1 seed of a pretty significant lead here, Marty, over Palmer Trinity here in Region 4. Of course, Archbishop Carroll and Everglades Prep 3-4, Palmer Trinity sitting there at True. And, of course, Everglades Prep and Westminster Christian keep flip-flopping these spots out here, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, going to be close there. As you said, True North, they'll have put their undefeated record on the line against Bradford this week. That's probably going to be their toughest test to this point. Bradford also putting their undefeated record on the line. So that'll be an interesting game. And that's Friday afternoon, right? 3:30, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
No, absolutely. And, of course, as we roll into this, we're going into Class 2S, which we've got a couple comments sitting here in the Class 2S. And, of course, we'll pull those up here in a moment here. But, Marty Pallman, please give us, everybody, what you've done the last 2 weeks on this one. The 1-8 seed sitting there in Region 1 and 2S is
Walton, South Walton, Grandpa Walton, John Boy Walton, Grandma Walton, Walton House. Yes, Walton, South Walton, still in that 1-8 spot. So Walton's still unbeaten, 6-0, staying there in that number 1 spot again this week, just ahead of Wakulla.
No, yeah, you're right, and that's the thing, and it's not very much separation between Walton and Wakulla here. So, and looking at that, you got Suwannee, Pensacola Catholic slides in the 4. Florida High, who took the loss of Carrollwood Day, is now sitting at number 5. So the team, the Class 2 state runner-up from last year, sitting there in 5. And, of course, you got Mariana Gabi, and, of course, sitting there in the 6 and 7 spots. West Florida still sitting there on the outside looking in, along with Gadsden County. So right there, those first 2 out. And it really is interesting. There's not really much change except, again, that 4-5 spot. And, of course, it's a matter of who's going to be home and who will be away in that game.
Yeah, and we have a quote from Rodney Bass saying about Suwannee. He said, hopefully Suwannee can make a deep run, and they have a game at Madison County this week. So that's going to show how, if they go undefeated, probably, if they can move up the spot. But right now, as you said, the 3 spot, they would play Mariana. But Suwannee's having a really good year at 6-0, but they haven't been able to catch Walton or Wakulla, who also are undefeated. You got 3 undefeated teams at the top in Region 1.
No, absolutely. And, of course, Gene McKenzie, who was replying to Rodney Bass, but we'll pop it up here on this one. That 11-3 will put a dark cloud over this statement. He's talking about the matchup between Bradford and Suwannee, which, Suwannee last year beat Bradford and gave Bradford their only loss. So, Bradford's looking for revenge this year, and that'll definitely give us a lot, which we will talk about Bradford here in a moment, as I know some people are waiting on here. And Michael Parsons definitely is laughing at the Waltons.
He's ready for that.
He was ready for that.
The Waltons, yes.
Absolutely. Of course, let's roll into Region 2 and 2S here, Marty. And Bradford is still holding that number 1 spot in the region, 12-0. It was a very low scoring game against Oakley, but hey, that's all it
Bradford
takes.
Wins, yeah. I mean, you don't give up any points, you're going to win most games. Bradford, I think, is giving up 14 points all season. So yeah, they're just so good defensively, but they don't score a lot. That's true, and it became a problem last year against Cocoa, who kind of beat them in a shootout. But right now, Bradford on top of this region, I think they're a pretty big favorite. We talked about it last week. Because Yulee in the 2nd spot, though, having a nice year at 5-1. Then you have Eastside, who moves up a spot to 3rd. Palaca
up a spot as well.
Up a spot to 4th. Baldwin drops 1 to 5. Baker County, Fernandina Beach, and Crescent City still in that 8th spot. And Crescent City most likely going to win the district title there, which will put them that's District 8 in 2S. But yeah, Eastside looks like they'll be district champs as well. Same for Yulee. So you got some interesting things at the top here, and then Keystone Heights, North Marion. I don't see how North Marion's going to make it. They only have 1 win.
And Keystone Heights actually is ranked higher than Crescent City in the power ranking, but because of Crescent City in their district, they would be the first team to go district champ, and that would keep Keystone Heights out. So you're looking at a situation where a team is going to be rated higher than a district champ, but the district champ's going to get to go in. So we'll roll from there on that one here, and of course rolling into Region 3 here, Marty. Cocoa still holding that 1 spot.
Yes, Cocoa 5-1. They are at the top. But how about this? They play Titusville this week, who's number 2 seed, still undefeated, 7-0. Cocoa at Titusville, so that probably will decide who ends up being the number 1 team in Region 3. And then you got South Sumter right behind them. South Sumter would play Mount Dora in the opening round. Hudson and Denellen. Hudson's an interesting team because they're undefeated, still 6-0. They actually will play Williston next week. Williston will go to Hudson. Williston has a bye this week, but Hudson, the Cobras having a big year as well still. And right now, still in the 4th spot. They would get a tough one with Denellen in the opening round.
No, you're absolutely right there, Marty, and everything. And let's keep a look at this here. Let's keep a rolling here. How about this? We look at it. We got, in terms of, the rest of the teams here, Mount Dora, Eustis, Palm Bay sitting there. Palm Bay actually slides in. Nature Coast is now the first team out here. And very, very interesting, despite the fact that Nature Coast did win this past week. They're sitting there the first man out. And, again, it's a matter of how's your schedule looking like at this point now, and what you've got left sitting there on the schedule. So a lot the next thing. So this, again, we're going into week 8. After this week, it's only 3 more weeks. Can you believe that?
That's right. I know this. It's weird. It's just funny how quickly the season goes by. I mean, we were just in the preseason, just starting practice, it seems like, and that was over 2 months ago now. We're 2.5 months ago. Yeah. I mean, it is funny how weird how fast the season really goes in high school football. But yep, Region 4, as we look at that, finally Fort Meade's at the top here.
And Bishop Verot, but it's very close between the 1 and 2 seed between Fort Meade and Bishop Verot here. But
Bishop Verot took its first loss to Jesuit last week.
But that's what you call a quality loss.
Exactly. So they don't actually drop in at all. They stay number 2. So Fort Meade and Bishop Verot really kind of in control at the top there. Not much of a difference. Hardy moves up to 7. Mulberry moves up 1 to 8, replacing Bayshore.
Yes, and Key West is the second team out right now who picked up. Yes, the Conks, and then of course Frostproof and Estera, they flip flop the 4-5 spots, and we got a comment from Emery Smith here.
I was just thinking about Emery when I was.
Yes, could you see Hardy moving to the number 6 seed by the end of the season if Hardy wins out and Booker loses to both Wiregrass Ranch next week and Lemon Bay in 2 weeks? I see that as a possibility, but if Booker wins at least one of those 2 games, he says, and I think the rest of it, I think Hardy will stay at number 7 seed and play either Bishop Verot or Fort Meade. And that would be an ouch on either team. But Emery, I would say right this second, I think there's a chance that, that Wiregrass Ranch is a really good team. So I don't see how Booker's going to be able to think. And then Lemon Bay, obviously. So is there a chance that Hardy moves up to that 6 seed? I think so. Maybe there's a chance that maybe even move up to the 5 seed. It just depends on how everything else shakes out here over this week and the last 3 weeks after this week, because those are the 2 most important things. The next 4 weeks of games are the critical parts that are going to determine who is in the playoffs here. And with that said, we're going to roll right on down into Class 2M here, or roll on up, as I should say. And how about this, Marty? Region 1, very much you're familiar with. And despite Bishop Kenny losing to Ponte Vedra, they actually move up a spot because Bowles lost to Columbia, and Bowles took a big slide down by 3 spots.
Yeah, Bowles lost to. I mean, normally you think losing to Columbia is not really a big deal, but that's a 1-4 Columbia team they lost to on the road. Meanwhile, Bishop Kenny, despite getting beat by 30-some points, was playing a 4-1 Ponte Vedra team who's second in their region. So yeah, Bishop Kenny moves up to a spot to second. Rains is in control here, 5-1. They have a pretty good sized lead in the number 1 spot. Rains and Andrew Jackson. How about that? That's a nice rivalry matchup in the opening round as Jackson now moves in this week, replacing Episcopal, who fell out.
Yeah.
And Wolfson up a spot. But yeah, that would be interesting to see Rains and Andrew Jackson. Bishop Kenny and Wolfson have already played. They're in the same district. BK won that game 42-0. Of course, we said last week Riverside has been in the playoffs for 2 weeks. The only team that still is clinched. And they are right now the 3 seed.
And actually, I got a correction there on that. Orlando Christian Prep did clinch their district too, so they are actually in. So, but I'm going to be working through the district scenarios here later tonight and tomorrow. Get those district scenarios up because this week we will have more playoff qualifiers clinch this week. I know that for a fact because it is week 8. And all the district games are final. Between the next 3 weeks are going to be a lot of district games here to determine the spots. So, with that said, it is going to be very, very interesting here. And rolling into Region 2, Marty, we have got Berkeley Prep still sitting there at the top spot, but they're actually not in control of the driver's seat in their district. It is Clearwater now sitting there with Calvary Christian sitting not too far behind because Berkeley Prep lost to Calvary Christian. So, a lot to be determined in District 2M7 right now. But, as you can see, the first 3 teams are 2M7 teams that are in the top 3. So that tells you how good that district is right there in terms of the teams. And then you got Blake sitting there, Robinson, Tampa Catholic, Brandon. And Brandon still sitting there holding the driver's seat for the district in 2M5. And Boca Ciega, who lost, who is going to still in the driver's seat in 2M8. some people think might be Lakewood. No, well, Lakewood will only get in if there isn't being a three-way tie, and Lakewood has a higher seed because Lakewood is actually rated higher right now than Boca Ciega, but Boca Ciega is in the driver's seat because they've already beaten Lakewood.
Boca Ciega is 1-6 with only winning against Lakewood. Huh?
Yes,
that's
and all they have to do is beat Gibbs and they're in. So that tells you something.
Gibbs is winless too.
Exactly. That's my
I
point.
thought we changed this rule where you don't get 1 and 2 win teams.
No, it was supposed to improve that, but we're still getting them.
Yeah,
so
not a lot, but yeah, you're right.
I would like for the rule to be. I think you should stop guaranteeing district champs to be in the playoffs
see that.
necessarily, because I mean, in my honest opinion, there's teams that are much better that are going to be left out, and this is we're going to hear the complaints again. Teams that were much better in terms of the power rating are going to get left out because a team that is sub 500 wins their district, and because of the rule, they get in. So that's my opinion, and that's all I'm going to say. If you like to disagree and hang me in the comments, please do so. I will let y'all do that.
Could be, yeah. So Region 3. Yes. Moving on in 2S, there's American Heritage again at the top. I'm sorry, 2M, pardon me.
Yeah, there you go. American Heritage Plantation still sitting there.
Yep, number 1 seed, 4-1 on the year. Cardinal Gibbons, who they've already beaten, American Heritage has number 2. Pretty good size lead there for those top 2. St. Andrews, Kings Academy, Calvary Christian are the top 5.
Yeah, and then we'd had a flip-flop between Somerset Canyons and American Heritage Delray Beaches is the region that has both American Heritage, which are sister schools, by the way. So, and then Stranahan, Fort Lauderdale, sitting there at the last spot again. In terms of the top 8 teams, no changes, just maybe a fluctuation or two here in terms of who's seated where. But other than that, Marty, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and then you go to Region 4, as you said, and the game that's going to decide really where who probably is on top of this region this week. Miami-Norland is number 1. Miami Central is number 2.
And we'll talk about that here coming up in the South Florida Blitz here at 7:30.
Right, but that game is probably going to be for not only the 2M13 district title, but probably the region number 1 seed in the region. Gulliver Prep is behind them in 3rd, but it's pretty good sized lead again between Norland and Central at the top. Central 3-2, Norland is 6-0, still unbeaten. Monsignor Pace makes a big jump this week, up 4 spots.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, of course, Booker T, Washington, Miami, Edison, St. Brennan, and North Miami Beach all sitting there right there in the spot. And, of course, as we try to roll this along here, we're heading into Class 3S, which we've already have a comment sitting there about I don't know what happened there, why my slide is not giving me 3S region.
Oh, that was the next one because that was – okay. Well, now you're in 3S.
I think one of my slides got messed up. So while we're talking about that, I will get that fixed here. So to figure out what happened here, because I want to make sure that I'm not missing a slide here in terms of for the later. But let's talk 3S Region 1 here. Marty, pretty much St. Augustine still sitting there at 1, and they have a good a small lead over Lincoln right now, but in terms of after that, the 1-2 spots, there's a big gap hostess between 1 and 2, and then from 2 to the 1 and 2, then 3 and 4 spots, and right now.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be St. Augustine at the top. They play the toughest schedule, as you said. Lincoln second, which would put a Lincoln Pine Forest matchup in the first round right now. That'd be pretty interesting between those two. Escambia 3rd, Choctaw 4th, Matanzas 5. Matanzas now in 5th. And there's the Middleburg Broncos. They get the win last week at Clay. How about that? Down 33-7, I think, came back and won that game.
Yes.
And Middleburg moves up 2-6. Clay drops 3. They stay in at number 8, but barely. And here come the Columbia Tigers now, up to 9th. They're starting to make a little bit of a move as well. In fact, of course, Columbia and Middleburg this week, probably for a district title, which will decide if Columbia moves up into the top 8 or not.
No, absolutely. And Michael Lashio joins us and drops the comment, and he said, like I said last week, Matanzas Clay next week is going to be a big game. St. Augustine almost certainly district winner. That game will have wild card implications, and you are right on the money there, sir. I think Michael Lashio, you should go to the pay window and collect on your paycheck there for that one, because you are right about that. And honestly, that Middleburg Clay game, that was the Middleburg like the largest comeback last week in a game last week for any team in the state. They were down 33-14. They were actually down 33-7 at one point going in before halftime. They were down 33-14. But we'll talk more about that on the North Florida Blitz. But I can tell you that game had major implications of Middleburg going from 8 to 6, and now you got Matanzas sitting there at 5. That the Matanzas Clay game is going to be huge because Clay's sitting there at 8, Matanzas 5. There could be some shuffling here, and of course, like you said, Middleburg and Columbia this week. That's going to have a lot of implications too.
Yep, it will. It's getting exciting. Got a couple of big weeks coming up in district play as we'll figure out who's going to be playing where and we get further down the road towards the playoffs. But, yeah, this is an interesting region, I think, too. And like I said, Columbia is starting to make a run, even though they're only 2-4, but they've won 2 in a row. They beat Bowles, so the Tigers now will have something to say about it.
No, absolutely. And, of course, here we go into Region 2. Vanguard still holding the 1 seat. Actually, Marty, the only change this week in the region, no other teams have moved out of their spots except there's been a flip-flop with 5A. The 5A is now in, and the team that I can't even remember was sitting – actually, I think I want to say it might have been Taveri sitting there as slid back further. So, and, here you go. 5A sitting there now 2 spots to come up 2 spots. They were the second team out last week, and they're now in position for a playoff spot right in a second.
What's interesting here is it looks like Vanguard and Lake Wales are tied. They are, in fact, 15. Is that correct? 15.446.
Let me see. Let me double check that here.
So
I may have
figure out that tiebreaker.
I may have written that wrong. Double check that real quick here.
What I'm seeing, they have them both are tied for first, but Vanguard was number 1 last week. Lake Wales was second. Lake Wales is the defending state champion. That's as you said, 3S Region 1 or Region 2. Pardon me.
No, absolutely, and I'm pulling that up now here because, I believe the strength of schedule is a key critical factor here in terms of would determine that. I would have to look at the rules that there is a tiebreaker in the rankings, but usually when we get to a certain point like that, we usually don't have to worry about that necessarily in terms of the rankings. But let me pull up here where I can find Vanguard sitting here in the list here, and I will tell y'all right now it's actually Lake Wales is 13.942. I misread that, so there is a little bit of difference.
Anyway, Vanguard they're 1-2 still, so no real change there.
No,
and Vanguard continues on top. Leesburg, they're only lost to Vanguard right behind at 3rd.
Okay, and so there's a question here. Shane Simmons is asking, why is Lake Wales number 2 with no losses? There is a multitude of factors here. This is not just based upon your win-loss. It's based upon the schedule you played and the teams you played in really my understanding is the ranking goes infinity deep. So it's looking, your opponents, and so far, and it gets back to obviously that particular team in their scheduling. And I can tell you this right now, it's that the biggest difference is that some of the teams, I would say there's probably a little bit of difference that the teams that Vanguard has played compared to Lake Wells.
Well, their only loss was to Beholds. I mean, I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, that's the big difference right there. Is Vanguard having that loss to Behold to 6-0? I think that makes the biggest difference there. Why Vanguard has that 1 seed compared to Lake Wells having the 2.
Yeah, I mean they'll probably end up playing again in the postseason, so who knows? But Lake Wales beat Vanguard; they shut them out last year. But yeah, interesting here. Leesburg with that 1 loss is only the only loss coming to Vanguard. Then Zephyr Hills, and then down the line Auburndale's in 6th, Lecanto, and then as you said, 5A moving in, replacing Tavares at the 8th spot.
Yes. All right. How about this? We go into Region 3 here, and coming up on the North Florida Blitz at 9:45 tonight, we'll have the head coach of the Mainland Buccaneers, Travis Rowland, joining us. And, of course, Mainland sitting there 6-0. They were on the bye this past week, but still holding that number 1 seed pretty nicely.
Actually, that's the Central Florida Blitz.
Central Florida Blitz. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but he will be on with us tonight.
And that would be 8:25. I'm sorry. My apologies.
You got it. No, it's okay. But Travis Rowland, right? The team is rolling, much like his name, and they continue to Mainland another blowout last week over Pine Ridge. They stay number 1. They might be the number 1 team in Class 3S. Again, last year they lost to Lake Wales in the state title game, so Lake Wales has something to say about it. But O'Galley's not far behind Mainland. O'Galley having a really good year at 6-1, and they stay number 2 again this week, which would put them against Melbourne. That'd be a rivalry game if Melbourne was their opponent. Actually, sorry, that's Rockledge. I couldn't see that. So Rockledge, either way, it's a
O'Galley and Rockledge would be the thing, and they're in the same district right there. And of course, Merritt Island would be there sitting there at 5, Satellite 4. Sebring moves up a couple spots, so some things are starting to look interesting in Region 3.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Fort Pierce Westwood dropping 5 spots this week, just
Well,
staying in at number 8.
That's what happens when you lose 22-20 to Moorhaven.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And Michael Parsons chimes in. The Doors, he's referring to Oak Alley. The Doors having a good year. That's the Commodores there at Oak Alley. And Shane Simmons did the thing after the thing. He said Lake Wells should get credit for being the thing.
I disagree.
No, you can only take so much
this year.
You can only take so much from last year and even put it into this year. And right now, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen here. All right, Marty.
And it all works itself out. I don't really think it's a huge deal that Lake Wells is number 2, but and it might have put them on the road to play Vanguard. But otherwise, yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. And I don't think this last year should have anything to do with what's going on this year.
No, absolutely. I know. You're right about that in a lot of ways there. All right. How about Region 4? Hey, the flip-flop from Golden Gate and Naples has happened again. Golden Gate back on top, Naples there. And everybody's like, well, Golden Gate didn't play last weekend, but Naples played last weekend. Well, Naples won, but Naples won against a pretty bad Palmetto Ridge team. Hence why, and First Baptist won, who they lost to the week before. So, again, quality schedule. That's the big thing. That's all it is. It's the quality of schedule at the end of the day.
Yeah, Barron Collier up 4 spots, so they move in this week. They're 5th back here. They would have right now a matchup with Parish Community, and then Port Charlotte drops 2. They stay 6th, but Southport Myers falling out. That's who Barron Collier replaces. Southport Myers was 6th a week ago, so some changes here. There's Lely, who's the first 2 out, and they play Naples this week.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, as we roll along here, we're going to get into Class 3M. Here we're Region 1, and Marty, not too many big changes here, other than that Lyman comes in at the 8th seed as Wakaiva slides out due to the loss to First Baptist, and Fletcher is up a spot because they got a 20-19 win over Ed White. So that helps them out a little bit for the Senators. But Lyman, the team that was the first team out last week, is now sitting there at the 8th seed, and I don't know. They might be sweating out that first round opponent there, Edgewater, who is 7-0.
Yeah, it's a tough one to start with, and Edgewater just keeps rolling at the top. Armwood continues there in the 2nd spot. You got Tampa Bay Tech at 7-0. The top 3 there are pretty solid, really, and then behind it, Oviedo, Wharton, and Fletcher. Fletcher's won their last 5 games now since starting 0-2, and at the bottom, you got Jones at 7, which is weird. They're usually higher than that.
Even though they won this past week, they kind of slid.
Spots,
because they had played a very, very bad Cypress Creek Orlando team. So
yeah, and then of course Lyman, as you said, slips in, replacing Wakaiva, who dropped 3 from last week.
No, absolutely, and of course, Armwood still sitting there with that number 2 seed, and of course that Tampa Bay Tech Fletcher 3-6. That would be a rematch from, I believe, from last year's first round game. So
that's correct, and then. Moving on to Region 2, and look at the top again. Once again, Tampa Jesuit, big win over Bishop Verot last week. So the once again Jesuit, despite being 4-2 at the top, Largo 2nd with a 5-1 record, and then the rest Hillsboro 3, St. Pete 4. They move up 4. Pinellas Park drops a spot to 5, and then Northeast and Seminole switch spots, and that's about it really there.
No, you're absolutely right there, Marty. And looking at everything here, and really, Jesuit helps their cause, of course, getting that big win over Bishop Verot. But right now, there's not too many changes sitting here in Region 2. And then, of course, Region 3, we roll along, and where St. Thomas Aquinas still maintains their grasp on the lead of the region, but to 2 and 3 spots have a flip-flop here between Atlantic and Coconut Creek. Of course, Atlantic helped out with a big win over Pahokee, and
that's a good one.
Yes, Coconut Creek won last week, 5-2, sitting there. Blanche Ely up a spot when they flip-flop spots with Plantation, and but how about Dillard, who despite the fact they lost to Chaminade Madonna this past week, is actually up a spot here because of Chaminade Madonna's
it's a good
very
loss.
Tough schedule. Yes,
and they lost by 30 points, I think, too. But as you said, it helped Dillard to play Chaminade Madonna, and right now, if the things are going to shake out, you'd have Coconut Creek and Dillard. That's a nice first-round matchup. Blanche Ely and Plantation. Blanche Ely's still hanging around. They move a spot to number 4. But it looks like Aquinas right now probably will be able to hang on in the number 1 seed in that region, and maybe as they look for another state title in 3M, pretty much one of the favorites in the state of Florida again.
No, you're absolutely right there, and all that. And of course, Marty, as we roll along, 3M Region 4, Coach DeBuck actually joining us here. Coach, you just missed 2M not too long ago. We did 2M. We're working our way up from the 1 all the way up to the 4. So that's how we're doing it here, as we already rolled up here. 2M's already done. We're rolling up here as we roll along here. But, Coach, appreciate you joining us and watching here.
Coach, you're second. Number two seed.
Number 2 seed sitting there in Region 3 in Class 2M, so that we can tell you that right there. Still that the case. So yeah. Unfortunately, Coach, we do 5 shows on Tuesday nights, and this is the first one that goes off, and then we have 4 more starting at 7:30. So
I know we start before it's dark here. Sorry, so you start practicing. But yeah, Cardinal Gibbons 2, American Heritage 1. Was it a 13.368 for the Cardinal Gibbons right now? St. Andrews right behind them. Kings Academy. Top 5. Calvin.
There wasn't really much change in that region from compared to last week.
Right. So,
and of course, I believe right now Cardinal Gibbons would get American Heritage Del Rey in the first round based upon the rankings. That was the only flip flop instead of Somerset Canyons like it was last week. It's American Heritage Del Rey this week. All right, Marty. We're done. We looked at 3M region 3, and then we're going into 3M Region 4 here. We're Homestead, who got the big win over Columbus. It moves up a couple spots here to the 1 seed in Miami Southridge, who got the win over St. Pete Lakewood last week, also up a spot. So Southern Dade County sitting there with the 1 and 2 spots, and of course South Broward slides back from 1 to 3. So there you go.
Yeah, big win for Homestead. That's a huge win to beat Columbus down there and get themselves up into that number 1 spot. But this has been a battle between Southridge, South Broward, and Homestead. But as you said, Southern Miami-Dade County really getting it done in this region. And as you see here, it looks like it's going to be probably those top 3, kind of a mixture of whoever ends up number 1. There's a lot of movement behind here, though. Highly American went up a spot. Belen Jesuit went up 1. Miramar went up 3. They weren't even in last week. Hialeah up 1. Dr. Crop fell 5 spots all the way to 8th.
Yeah, and then Pembroke Pines Charter, who was there in the 7th spot last week, out
for now. Of course, that can change again this week.
No. Week. And Coach DeBuck, you're welcome there. We got you covered here as always here. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna roll into Class 4S now. So we're in 4 Suburban here, Marty, and Buchholz. Still sitting there at the 1, and they got a good, a little bit of a good lead on Ponte Vedra, but Ponte Vedra definitely a very good team. You saw that fact. You have firsthand last week against Bishop Kenny. Ponte Vedra 5-1, Buchholz 6-0, Niceville 6-1, sitting there at 3, and really the only changes that are happened in the Region 1 this week was Pace and Leon flip-flopping spots. Pace up a spot, Leon down a spot after Leon took their first loss of the season to Lincoln, got shut out by the Trojans. So that tells you a lot of things right there.
Big game coming up this week there. Creekside and Bartram Trail will play. Bartram Trail, despite being 3-3, is 4th because they played IMG Academy this past week, number 1 team in the nation, and lost, but they have really played a tough schedule. Buchholz continues to roll. They'll have a game at Oakleaf this week. Ponte Vedra, I saw them on Friday night. That is a team that hits. They run the ball. They have really one of the best running backs I've seen in Brian Case, and their quarterback is a dual threat. A team that lost to Bartram Trail week 1 by 3, and they haven't lost since. They've been rolling since then. And Niceville, they're always in there somehow in the 3rd spot. They would play Leon right now in the first round. By the way, Leon got their first loss of the season against their city rival Lincoln. Not surprisingly, maybe, but they only drop a spot to 6th. They're still right in the middle of the playoff hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And right there. And then, of course, Tecoy Creek is now the first team out. So there you go. Wow. Tecoy Creek is sitting there knocking on the door, hopefully looking for their first playoff berth 3 years into being a school there. I believe 4th year.
This is their 3rd year.
There's a 3rd year?
That's right.
It's a 3rd year? Yeah, Beachside's 2 years now.
The Beachside's in the 2nd, yeah. And Beachside's an independent. Otherwise, they would be in the playoffs. They're like 7-1 this year, 6-1.
And they'd be sitting there in 4S too. Probably sitting there probably about 3S or 4S there. So
that's right. All right. Well, Region 2, and we talked about this a lot last week with your friends there from Polk County on the Central Florida Blitz. Lakeland and Bartow, and it wasn't even close as it turned out. Lakeland 30-2. So Lakeland and Bartow switch spots this week. Lakeland number 1, Bartow now 2nd.
Yeah, and this is again This is the reason why sometimes teams with records with no losses, sometimes it can be misleading, and why they should team just because your team is really has no losses does not mean they're always the best team. And look at Lakeland 5-2, they have played an incredibly tough schedule. Their only 2 losses are to Miami Norland and St. Joseph's Prep out of Pennsylvania. So there you go.
Yeah, those. No problem with those losses with me, but
no, not at all.
Wiregrass Ranch, that's another good team in third. Lake Mineola goes up a spot to fourth. They won 2 games last week. Springstead, they move up 2 to fifth. George Jenkins falling 3, but staying in at number 7. And then behind that, you have Winter Haven and now Ocala Forest moving up. We'll talk to Alan Pettigrew of the Ocala Star Banner coming up the North Florida Blitz about the Forest Wildcats.
Yes, that's tonight at 9:45 here. And as you said, George Jenkins, who was 4-0 last week, and sitting there in that top 4 spot. Again, it's all about the scheduling, and losing to Frostproof. That shows you right there the strength of schedule. That as sometimes they say, sometimes with these teams, these records are sometimes fool's gold.
Coach DeBuck saying Beholtz is real good.
Oh,
yes, sir, they are. I've seen them a few times.
They're not skipping a beat under first-year head coach Chuck Bell.
Yeah, they really aren't at all. And so next up, Region 3. And speaking of this team, how about this team, University, Orange City? What a year they're having. Undefeated, still 6-0 on top of this region. They continue to be on top, although I know they have a pretty big game. They have a game at DeLand coming up. I think it's this week, right?
Yeah, and it's a huge game. Actually, it's coming up here pretty soon. If it's not this week, it's in the next 2 weeks because of district games wrapping up here. But it really Orange City University. But there's not much of difference between University and Treasure Coast there in terms of the rankings.
No, Treasure Coast is 4-2. University 6-0. Palm Bay Heritage up a spot. Vero Beach drops 1. They switch each other. DeLand 5. New Smyrna Beach 6. Spruce Creek moves in. They are 7th, replacing Martin County, who drops out. And then you have Toho. Sorry, I'm just going to call them
Tohopakalika.
The Tohopakalika, yeah, I got it. But we call them Toho. So
and Toho right now sitting there, because of 4S10. But I remind y'all right now, everybody's going to be asking, where's Osceola? Where is Osceola at? Well, Osceola's sitting there. They only have 1 win on the season, but they've got 4 more games left. Plus, one of those games is a game against Toho. And I'd be honest with you, compared to the schedule that Toho's played, compared to the schedule Osceola's played, Osceola will most likely be a 5-5 team going into the playoffs as a district champ here. And Toho's probably going to be the one team that might get left behind here because, again, the scheduling is important, and it's going to show here. That's what I believe here. And Coach DeBug is asking how good Live Oak is. I mean, he's referring to Swanee. Sitting there at 6-0 still and on the season. So
they're going to be tested, though, as you said, Madison County, and then at the end of the year, Bradford. They got some big tests coming up. Their schedule hasn't been the best so far, Swanee, but they've been winning pretty easily each week. We'll see.
And Michael Parsons.
We'll find out a lot.
Osceola will be fine and tested. You are correct on that one, sir. I believe so. I will agree with you.
All right. So let's move to Region 4, and this changes because Venice beat Manatee by 20 points last week. So Venice gets a big win. They move to the number 1 spot.
Real quick here. Shane Simmons says did mention that thing, and you're right. I did forget about that. I was the thing with so many teams here. Osceola does have to play Mainland, so don't know about 5-5, but 4-6. I'd still say that I would see
probably gets them in.
Osceola still at 4-6, probably gets them in over Toho, who probably ends up with 6 to 8 wins somewhere in that stretch.
Yeah. So Region 4, we were talking about Venice. They easily beat Manatee last week, so the 2 switch. Venice number 1, Manatee 2. Then you got Sarasota Riverview and Naples Gulf Coast, your top 4.
I mean, Venice and Manatee, flip-flop spots. Venice has kind of worked the way thing. Venice had been below 2 teams the past couple of weeks ever since the rankings started. Riverview, and then, of course, then Manatee, and then here you go. It's Venice is now sitting there in that top seed as we all expected. So that's a big thing right there. And Justin Floyd, how about 3S? We went
Too
through
late.
the thing, guys. for future reference, we start with the lower classes first, so all the 1 classes, then we work our way up from 1 up to 4. So that's how we do it here. So
speaking of that, let's go on to our last one, 4M. Which
well, here we go.
We're a little bit late tonight. We started a little bit late, so we're going to go a little bit past 7 here, but that's okay, no problem there. Our next show will be at 7:30, and we'll start in Region 1, and Lake Mary's still on top here in Region 1. They
yes, absolutely.
unbeaten.
Yes, Lake Mary still on top here. Boone, they're still sitting there at the 8th seed. And I'll tell you this, looking at these teams here, you look at the numbers, Apopka and Mandarin flip-flop, they are the 4-5 seed. That'll be a very interesting matchup if that holds. Seminole, Haggerty 2-7, Winter Park, Evans. Winter Park and Evans have already played. Evans is definitely catching on fire here. Winter Park 3-6 with the 3-6 matchup there. So I'll tell you, it's going to be really, really interesting here. I'll tell you that, Marty.
It is, and right now, I like those matchups. All these Orlando area schools, except Mandarin, they're the only one who's not from the Orlando area. But Apopka Mandarin would be a good first round matchup. Apopka finally found an offense last week and beat Olympia, so that was a big win for them as well. But Atlantic Coast and Oak Ridge are on the outside looking in right now. Region 2 continues to be Riverview squared. Riverview.
Yes, absolutely. Here, and as we roll into Region 2, by the way, real quick, J.C. Denton brings up a good point, because here we're on a collision course for, if I can get it to pop up here, there we go. Mainland versus Lake Mary will be game of the week potential in a few weeks, and those two teams could be undefeated here and everything.
Will be. And then you're right. Mainland's got Deltona this week, who's winless. They'll win that. But yeah, you're right. Mainland Lake Mary is going to be a lot of fun. But looking at Region. That's actually Region 2. It says Region 1.
But but it's Region 2. Sorry about that.
That's okay. But either way, Riverview squared, as we said, they're still 6-0 and unbeaten. Palm Harbor right behind them at 5-1. And then Sumner moves up a spot to 3rd. Other than that, only changes as Dr. Phillips moves back in at number 7, and Plant does as well. They're now 8th. Plant now. And there's Alonzo and Olympia drops 7 and right out of the top 8.
Yeah, there you go. That's what we've got right there, sitting there in Region 2 in Class 4M. How about this? Let's roll into Region 3 here. Palm Beach Central still holding that 1 seed there in Region 3 and 4M. And very, very interesting. It's Santa Lucia's a Spanish River 4-5. Monarch and Palm Beach Gardens are sitting there 2-7. But Boca Raton is this week's biggest mover in Region 3, who is now sitting in the 3 seed and would host Jupiter in the 6.
Yeah, lots of movement here, at least in the back. Santa Lucia's dropping 1, but staying there in 4th. Spanish River dropping 1 to 5th. And then, as you said, Park Vista is able to get in there this week for the first time. So Park Vista, even though they're 2 and 4, right there, the number 8 spot.
No, absolutely. And of course, last but not least here tonight, Marty Pallman, and we're only 4 minutes over past 7 o'clock here. We did pretty well here. But again, this is what happens when there's not a lot of changes here in the weekend. Columbus, despite the fact they lost, are still sitting at the 1 seed. I mean, I don't expect Columbus to give up that 1 seed.
Yeah,
but,
they're kind of far ahead there, and they're still well ahead of Miami Palmetto despite that loss. Palmetto 5-1, and they have like a 2.5 point lead still, does Columbus.
Yeah, and everything. And, of course, West Broward jumps this week because they beat South Broward, so they're sitting there. They're the 3 seed. But Goldman comes back in, replaces, I believe it was Miami High that was sitting there in the last seed. So Goldman now number 8.
Gables, yeah.
So there you go.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah.
So there you go, right there. And in terms of what the regions look like here, Region 4 and 4M, and not many changes this week.
Yeah, I see some more. Lake Mary's last 3 games going to show what they got. Also, more questions about 3S. Okay, well, check out our archive.
Yeah, you can check out the archive after this. The show will be available for replay after this, because we start by going we start with 1R, we go to 1M, 1S, 1M, and then we go 2S, 2M, 3S, 3M, and then 4S, 4M. So that's how we do it here on the playoff breakdown show. And Marty, definitely, one of those things where we talk about this and, trying to, just break these rankings down. And it's going to be clear. Once we get to week 11, that final ranking before they release the final whole enchilada of terms of playoff brackets, we're going to have a good idea who's pretty much locked in. Of course, where a lot of teams are going to be decided with district championships this week, and that will give us a more clear indication of where we're going.
Yeah, we're getting into the kind of the thick of the district race. So this week we'll decide some things as well. Again, right now I think we only know 2 teams have actually won their districts, Riverside and Orlando Christian Prep. I have to look, maybe South Florida as well has some teams. But yeah, that's going to do it. We another week of breaking this down, and we'll do it again next Tuesday once again from 6 to 7 or around that time.
No, absolutely. And of course, Michael Parsons sitting there. Great job, Marty and Josh. Peeps need to get on here earlier.
Thanks, Michael.
Yes, and so it's a lot right here and everything. And of course, and
Where is Zephyr Hills? He's asking. That's down near Tampa.
Well, but it's in there in Class 3 Region 2, and they're in the thick of the playoff hunt right there.
That's right. Okay, well, that's going to do it for Week 3 of our playoff breakdown show. Thanks for watching. For Joshua Wilson of FloridaHSFootball.com, I'm Marty Pallman saying so long. Coming up 7:30, the South Florida Blitz here on YouTube, also Facebook and Twitter. So long for now.